Unit 1, Section 1, Introductory Geometry Vocabulary. In this section, we're going to talk about some of the really important words that you need to form the foundation of your learning for the branch of math called geometry. Let's get started. All right, so I'm going to start by reading the explanation because I think that kind of sets the stage for our learning. So geometry is the study of all things related to points, lines, and planes. We will learn about shapes, angles, and intersections in math and real life. It is a very old branch of mathematics and has many new vocabulary words and definitions you may not have heard before. There are actually several types of geometry. We are doing Euclidean geometry. It stands for the man named Euclid who came up with a lot of these terms. The best way to learn a new word is to learn it with a visual, a symbol, and a definition. All right, so I'm going to attempt to do that with you as we go over this together. I'm going to draw the symbol and I'm going to draw something that shows you what this vocabulary word looks like. The great thing about geometry is it's pretty hands-on. It's not quite as abstract. There are a few parts that are abstract, but compared to algebra where you keep solving for something that doesn't exist, it's a little bit more concrete. You can see things. So let's begin. Point is an exact location in space. It has no dimensions, so it doesn't have a length, width, or height, and it is labeled with a letter. So if I were to show you a point, it would just be a little circle, and then we would put the letter, let's say the letter A goes with it. So that's the symbol, and then that is the way that we see it in when we are doing math. That's how we'll see it. So then what we do is we put all those points together and we get a line. A line is a collection of points that extends endlessly in both directions. So you can see the two arrows that signify that it extends endlessly. Now most times lines will have a name, and you name the line with letters and points. So this line is line AB. If I were to show that as a symbol, it's going to look like this. Here's A, here's B, and then we need to make sure we have the arrows to show that it's a line. So this is the symbol, and this is how it will look when you are working with it in the geometry branch. All right, so then we have a line segment. A line segment does not have arrows. When you saw a line segment, it would have a point on each end. There would not be any arrows. That would be A, that would be B. And if I were to show this as a symbol, it would be just a small little line above the two letters. So that's a line segment. As you can see, this is the symbol because it does not have any arrows. And then this is the way that you would see it in geometry. All right, so a ray is a part of a line that has one end point. All right, so if we look at a ray, it looks like this. It has a point on one end and an arrow on the other. Now, there could be a point somewhere in between that would also have a letter attached to it. So this is A, this is B. This is considered ray AB. I'm going to do this over here. So it's going to look like this, and then underneath we're going to write the A and the B. Okay? So once again, here's your symbol, and here is what it's going to look like in geometry. An endpoint. An endpoint is one or more points that form the end of a line segment array. Well, we don't need to draw that because we've seen them already. This is an endpoint here because it forms the end. This is an endpoint. Here is an endpoint. Array only has one. A line segment has two. And then we have midpoint. A midpoint is when we have a line segment and a point in the middle of that line segment that forms the exact middle, meaning that both the sides are equal. And these little tick marks can help you see that things are equal. We'll get to that later when we talk about triangles, but those kind of are symbols to say this is equal to that. And that's how it would look in geometry. Once again, there would be some sort of letters, and this would be your example of geometry. A midpoint is just a point. Finally, a plane. This is a little bit abstract. A plane is a flat, two-dimensional surface that extends to infinity. So if I were to try to draw it, it's not, but I can draw kind of like this. Basically, we're thinking of that as flat, sort of like a table, and it's going to have just one letter on it, and that's going to tell you that's plane A. okay? And it extends to infinity in all directions. All right, so those are your vocabulary. Let's look at an example of some comparison. So what is the difference between these three diagrams? Well, let's take a look. Use the following words in your explanation. We have line, line segment, point, and endpoint. And there's one word missing, so I'm going to see if you can figure out what that word is. So let's begin with the word line. Which of these is a line? Well, this is a line because it has arrows on both sides that say it goes to infinity. And if we were to draw this, the symbol would be AB, and above it we would draw the line with the two arrows. All right, so line segment. Which one's the line segment? Well, this is the line segment because I have an endpoint and an endpoint, so this would be line segment AB. Point, well, we've been talking about that. There's the point. This is also an endpoint. And then finally, what did we not list as one of the possibilities? What is this right here? If you said ray, you are correct. This is a ray. And it's ray CD. So if I were to draw ray CD, it would have an arrow on one side and a point on the other. This is not a midpoint because you can't have a midpoint when one side goes to infinity. If it was here, I would consider that a midpoint because line segments can be split in half and each side would be exactly the same. All right, let's look at this vocabulary and match it. So let's start with the definition. A collection of points that continues in two directions. Well, if it continues in two directions, we know that that means it's a line. A point on a line or line segment that shows the middle of it, that's going to be our midpoint. An exact location in space with no dimensions. An exact location with no dimensions was a point. A part of a line with two endpoints, that's going to be our line segment. A point that shows where the line finishes, that's going to be your end point. A line with only one end point would be a ray. Good job. And a flat 2D surface that extends forever would be a plane. All right, so your turn to match up. But before you do that, just be careful. The lines, rays, line segments, and points, they all seem similar. It's important to think about the differences when you're learning these terms. And the symbols are very important to know because they're the language of geometry. Just like in algebra, you were reminded that there were certain things you couldn't write or they would mean a totally different thing. That's the same for these symbols. So they need to be accurate. All right, so you have your own matching. It's not matching, actually. You have to write the definition in your own words. You can go back and read and then go back and write it in your own words. Draw the symbol if it has one and a diagram of what the term looks like. Good luck.